We have been playing a famous Roman city builder for decades now, and there's a lot of options through our past. But where are the new ones that are good? Are there any new ones that are good? Maybe, but there is one more being announced right now which has piqued my interest, but I'm not entirely convinced just yet. It's called Nova Roma, and you can see it on screen right now, and you can see why it looks good, but also I have some hesitations. So over the years, we of course have been playing Caesar 3. Since the advent of city builders, it went into Roman territory pretty quickly. Caesar 1 was just a couple years after the first Sim City, which is the first city builder. Caesar 2 came along and it was actually really good and still holds up today if you want to check that out. And we have of course been playing Caesar 3 for decades and over a decade on this channel. We have also seen other Roman city builders like Imperium Romanum and Grand Ages Rome and Civ City Rome, which all have their own little unique takes on the Roman city builder. But it has been a long time since we've gotten one that has made an impact, you could say. So looking at this game, there is a bit of a fact sheet in terms of what they're trying to say here. On the list includes innovative new water mechanics that can be manipulated via infrastructure, so actual dynamic water. There's complex supply chains requiring constant expansion into the resource-rich countryside. So it's not just your city, but also expanding into the surrounding areas. Population needs that range from food and finery to coliseums and games to keep the people entertained, so that is expected of any Roman city builder. Intricate city management through laws, edicts, and a tech tree. That actually is an interesting point because it sort of brings us back to the Civ City Rome kind of approach, which Civ City Rome, if you haven't seen it, I've got a video on it. It's basically when civilization combined with Sid Meier to make a Roman city builder. So there was a tech tree in there, which was basically the Civ tech tree. And that was actually kind of cool and weird and interesting. So it's interesting to see. I mean, tech trees and city builders, typically they're sort of in the more survival city builders, not so much the more standard city builders. So it'll be interesting to see how a tech tree plays into this game. It also says a variety of dangers to confront, whether it be barbarians, your own gods, or jealous machinations of the old empire. So it does sound like there's gonna be invasions, some form of military, gods and god curses, and most likely god blessings as well, and various forms of politics. It is also promising bigger, better maps, better terrain sculpting, and much more. So terrain sculpting sort of implies that you could create custom maps with more fluid and dynamic kind of maps, and maybe even terrain sculpting in actual gameplay because it's talking about that the fluid water dynamics. So it could be that you actually have to control the flow of water in this game, and that I think would be the first Roman city builder that actually uses functioning aqueducts. I really hope that is what they're doing here, because that would be very cool, and it's something we've never seen before. But it does have to be said that, I mean, quite visually obviously, that this is a low poly game. There are a low number of polygons, which is, I know, an art style that is a make or break for a lot of people. A lot of you will have already tuned out saying it's a low poly game, I don't care. And that's perfectly reasonable, perfectly understandable. You're free to not like the art style. For me, myself, it's not always my favorite art style. I've mentioned recently that I kind of liked how, how Valheim looks, how System Shock looks, the System Shock remake, where it's sort of the mid-poly. I much prefer the mid-poly approach. It saves on resources, but it has that pixely look. But the low-poly approach has the cleaner, more defined look. So I'm okay with it, but it's not my first pick of an art style. Also, notably, besides the graphics, you can see through this trailer that there are seasons. At one point in the trailer, it does actually flash to autumn, to winter, and back to green. So that's also very cool. So my hope for Nova Roma is that it's it brings a lot in exchange for the low poly, right? So the low poly is there to allow these things to happen, because that's the point of low poly. It's supposed to improve performance so that you can do more complex things without killing your computer. So if it's got actual seasons and fluid water dynamics, and maybe in winter the water does actually freeze, and the aqueducts do actually flow water into fountains with actual flowing water, and maybe resources regrow, and maybe there could be natural disasters that cause volcanoes and stuff, and then you get like a populous the beginning kind of thing. That would be really cool. But I don't know if all of that will be implemented in as cool a way as it needs to be. You know, and generally I'm kind of okay with the whole low poly look, as it's not so jarring here until I actually see the people, the citizens. They are actually basically just rectangles, and like the buildings have detail to them, the terrain has detail, even the trees have quite a few polygons, but the people, the citizens walking around, are just cubes. Well, maybe 2 cubes, or is it 3? It's 3 cubes. And I feel like that's where it gets a little bit jarring, because once you zoom in and you see the people are actually just cube creatures, I feel like that's where my immersion breaks on the low polyness. If they could add, I mean, when you see the gods, that's a low poly god. Like when you see Jupiter in this trailer, like that's a low poly god, but there's enough detail there to be like, okay, this looks, that still looks cool. That looks like a person. But like zooming in and seeing your citizens as just cubes, that, I think that's where my immersion level breaks. That's where I'm like, oh, right, this is low poly. So, personally, I don't know how possible it would be, but I would love to see the citizens get a bit more detail. But I don't know if that's even possible at this stage of development. So this is literally just being announced right now, right this second. So let me know what you think. Is this the Roman city builder, the new Roman city builder that you've been waiting for, or are you gonna hold out and wait until you see more, or have you written this off already? I'd love to know what you think. But also, I should recommend, if you haven't played any of the older Roman city builders, they do have their good points. Caesar 2, definitely, you should go check that out just to see where things came from. If you haven't played Caesar 3, don't forget, Caesar 3 Augustus is getting new updates and more improvements, because the latest unstable build adds so much stuff, even moving cloud shadows. Amazing. I love those. But also there's a new cart depots. They're implementing new monument resources in Caesar 3 Augustus with sand and stone and all sorts of stuff like that. So yeah, if you haven't seen Caesar 3 Augustus, go check that out, and also get the latest unstable build if you want all the new cool features. And I can recommend a bit of a foray into Civ City Rome. It's interesting, but it feels kind of a little bit busted. And I hear it gets very busted towards the end of the game. But Grand Ages Rome, that one holds up. Grand Ages Rome is, I think, still a good game. So if you aren't into this Nova Roma game coming up, and you haven't played Grand Ages Rome, I can recommend that one. Anyway, to finish up some facts for this one, this is developed by Lion Shield, which is the same developers as Kingdoms and Castles, which is another kind of builder game. And this is published by Hooded Horse, which is a publisher that basically ran Tacticon, which I hosted earlier, like about a month ago, I guess. And Hooded Horse has been publishing some very good games, including games like Old World. So they've got a good publisher on this one, which does give more hope to Nova Roma. But I'm still not 100% convinced yet. I don't know. What do you think? Is this it, or is this not it?